Hi, it's Matt from Black Hole Woodworking. Welcome back. Today I'm turning these unassuming parts into an ab roller. This little tree had to be removed in order to get a camper off of a property, so I snagged it and decided to give it a new life. I'm using my spindle rough and gouge to get this guy down to round, or at least close. After the rough and gouge, I switched to my skew because this wood is pretty wet, and that rough and gouge does what its name says. It leaves the wood pretty rough. With a skew, I get nice shavings, so half the fun is just that. And I also get a nice clean surface to work with, so I can mark out what I need just a little easier. Another little benefit is when you see chips flying off, I know I'm not completely round yet. And when you see the shavings fly off, long spindly ones, then I know I'm round. So I guess another benefit here is that then I know what the maximum diameter is that I've got left to use. Now that I've got this to its max diameter, it's time to move on to the next part, which is the wheel in the middle. I'm back to the rough and gouge for this. There's a little bark on here, and that came off in a hurry right there. So it was time to check to see what happened, because I didn't quite know until I turned off the lathe. A little more to go. The main thing is when you're doing this, keep your face out of the way of the spinning path. After I was mainly round, I switched to the 1/2-inch spindle gouge to give it a nice clean surface. I needed to smooth out the face of the log as well, so I did that with the spindle gouge too. I also decided to give it a little chamfer on the edge to make it a little nicer to touch. As far as design goes, I wanted to make this wheel look a little bit like a train wheel. I also need to have a spot to grab this thing with a chuck so I can flip it around from either side. So I decided to do it this way. I'm using a beading and parting tool, just measured for the chuck and really just pushed in. It's kind of like a negative rake scraper. It worked. For the hole itself, I'm drilling a 35mm hole, as that's the largest hole I have on my Forstner bit, and that should be a good size for what I've got left over from that tree. On to the other side, I've got to do very much the same thing. If you haven't noticed already, this piece of wood is so dry. Since I drilled the hole about halfway through from the other side, all that's really left here is to drill the other half from this side. As this is more of a utilitarian piece of wood, I'm just going to finish this with beeswax. Now on to the tricky bits. I've got to make a handle, and somehow I've got to make that handle fit through the hole, yet connect on both sides, and not allow the wheel to go past a certain point from either side. So we'll see how I get to that here in a minute. Again, this is the tree that we had to take down, and it's really wet, so it gets really tough to cut with the beating and parting tool. So I've typically opted to use the skew here. Now in this case, I'm just trying to give the end of the handle its round over. Yeah, that was a bad move. Tried too hard and now I got a catch. So I have to clean that up. Thankfully, it didn't really affect the end result at all. I wanted to have a much thicker handle than these things normally come with because it's a little easier on the hands. So I'm kind of getting the handle down to about the size that I want, but only going so far because I still have to measure out a few things. I found that about 4.5 inches would fit the width of my hand or anyone's in our family, and then I wanted a little bit of a bead at the end, or half bead, because that's where the wheel is going to rest up against to not allow it to move towards my hand. Cutting this half bead gets really hard to see when that wood keeps wrapping around itself like that. Now it's time to bring that center part down. Again, I tried with that beating and parting tool because usually is a much easier way to use a caliper to get down to size. But man, is that hard. The skew, however, just cuts right through. It's really easy. A final quality check, a little trim, and that's done. On to the other side. I can't say it's a repeat, except for the end itself, where I want to make a bit of a bead and a half bead to capture that wheel in the middle. The rest of it, though, when we get to the center, that's the other tricky bit. So for now, we'll get the handle on this side down to the same size as the handle on the other side. Cutting through knots with a skew can be a little bit challenging, but you gotta keep that bevel locked firmly and then it'll be okay. I'm not planning on sanding this guy at all, so this final pass with the skew is going to be nice and clean. Alright, now that that's done, time for the center. I measure the diameter of the inner part of the wheel, and I've got to get this piece down to that diameter. My Forstner bit was 35 millimeters, so that's what I'm going for. The wax here is going to get buffed on ultra shiny, I guess, because I want it to be slippery. Time for a test fit on the wheel. Well, I got the diameter right, but it's a little too tight, so I guess it's wrong. I'm going to take off a little bit. I want it to be as snug as possible so that it feels more like a ball bearing even though I don't have one. And then the wheel won't rock back and forth as I try to use it. Test fit again, and that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. It spins freely and there's very little play. Now I'm going to use a 25mm Forstner bit to drill out that handle. And I do make a pretty dumb move here. Everything is going super well. This thing's cutting nice and smooth and straight. There's very little wobble. It was a good day. And then I decided to take it out to see how it was really doing. Yeah, that right there, not good. Everything else was a little wobblier now, but it really didn't affect the end result. But the fit, yeah, perfect. Alright, time to test fit the whole thing. Handle's great, still. I still have to take off the ends though, yes. Ooh, a nice good friction fit. The wheel spins freely. This is great. Alright, time to do the final cleanup. Remount the ends of the handle and really just turn those waste pieces down to round. Time to nip the ends off with a skew. Can't really sand this because it's wet wood. And it will change a little bit with some time as it dries out, but that should be okay. There we go, it functions. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for sticking around. Leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, and if I've earned your subscription, thanks.